Good morning. It's good to see everyone here. Love that the Condries are with us this morning. So, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at a subject that is rather unique in and of itself, but it also entails two different sides of the story. Because one side of the story is talking about light, and one side of the story is talking about darkness. This morning, we're going to start this 2-week series, if that's what you want to call it, by talking about light and dark, part 1. And this morning, we're going to talk about light, and tonight we're going to talk about dark. And then next week, we're going to bring in light and darkness again. But we're going to be looking at these in different ways and in different understandings. And so it's important for us as Christians to realize just exactly what God has for us, what God has done for us, and why we are the way we are. I tell people all the time, when it comes to the Christian life, it's not about telling someone, well, we live this way because that's what God says, but we tell them we live this way because, and we give them an answer to their question. When someone asks, why do you not use instruments in worship? I don't just say, well, because. I tell them, well, this is what the Word shows me and teaches me. Well, why do you do this? Or why do you do that? Well, this is what the Word says. I give them an answer to that question. And so when it comes to light and dark, there are two sides to this, because the light obviously representing purity, representing righteousness, and darkness representing the futility of the flesh and the things that involve it. We have to understand why God references them the way He does. We're going to read from John chapter 3 and verse 16 here in just a moment. And no, John chapter 3 verses 16 through 21 doesn't say anything about light and darkness, but it does teach us some understandings as to why God did what God did. Why did Jesus die on that cross? Why are we the way we are, or to be? Read with me, starting in verse 16. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. He who believes in Him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone who practices evil hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. But he who does the truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be clearly seen, that they have been done in God. Why? Why do we do what we do? Why do we teach? Why do we act? Why do we speak? Why do we try to live the life that we're supposed to live, that God has deemed is good for us? Why do we do these things? Well, the easy answer is because whether man accepts that there's a hell or not, there is a hell. That's the easy answer. But it's not about whether or not we believe in hell. It's about whether or not we believe in Jesus. You see, Jesus wasn't just a man that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and went against the wrong authorities and therefore was put on this cross and tortured and died. That's not who that Jesus is. Jesus is the man that came from God because God loved us and He desired us to have a life with Him. And the only way that we could have that life with Him is by getting beyond the sin that we have. And so Jesus had to die on that cross. Light is what makes it evident that we are who we say we are. Let's just take a look at that light. When we talk about light, what do we mean? What do we see? You know, it's interesting. I come in, sometimes I'm one of the first ones here, sometimes I'm not. When I'm not, the lights are already on. But when I'm not the first one in, one of the things I do is I make sure I turn the lights on. Why? Because I want us to be able to see when we come in. I've asked this before. How many people have been in this auditorium with all the lights off? Yeah, can you see the pews? Can you see the table? Nope. I don't know how many times I almost walked into that table trying to get my light on my phone so I could see where the table was. You can't see it at night. And so we turn the lights on to be able to see where we're going. Well, the same concept is the way it is when we talk about the light. The light that comes from God. That light, the light, seen in Genesis chapter 1. God's light shone or shines in all of creation. According to Genesis chapter 1, it shines throughout all of creation. You can't change it. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to change what God has already done. It's not going to happen. What do I mean by that? In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. You can't change that. Oh, we could try, but we can't change it. And the light that God created was His presence within everything and in all things. Later on, we're going to find that He's going to take and He's going to make the sun, moon, and stars. And He's going to put them in the firmament that's above. And they're going to give light. But what is that light in the beginning? When God said, "Let there be light," it's not the sun. Because that's not created until day 4. It's His presence. It's Him. It's His creation coming into existence and His presence being there. God's light has shone throughout all of the world since creation. Since the moment God did that. And you can see that in Romans chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. He has made it evident to them. He has shown it to them. He has allowed us to understand that His presence is there. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world says. It doesn't matter about any of that, because the truth of the matter is God did it. And in everything that you and I see, we understand God did it. How many of us have been out at night in the middle of nowhere where there's no lights that can take away from the stars? Y'all have heard me ask this question before. And we can look up at the stars and we see all of these beautiful stars that are lining the sky. And you can see the constellations a lot better the further out you get from light of the cities. Oh, it's so amazing, the beauty that you can see in those stars. Where'd they come from? They came from God. Because His invisible attributes have been made known to us. Not just made known. We know within ourselves there is a God because of what He has done. So since the creation of time, God's light has shone so that we know who He is. But that light doesn't stop just at the light of Genesis chapter 1. We also see His light, as seen in John chapter 1, verses 4, 5, 7, and 9. Well, what are we talking about? Well, what did Jesus do? Why did Jesus come? Well, if you read John chapter 10 and verse 10, it says, I have come to give light. In other words, He brought life to us, according to John 10:10. He brought that light to us. He brought us life. Life isn't what you and I see here. Life is what we don't see. Let me explain that a little bit deeper. Our true life does not start until after we leave this earth. When Jesus comes and He claims those that are His and He takes them back to heaven and He presents them before God as a royal priesthood, as a holy nation, as the saved, the called out from the world of sin, as He does this, real true life begins. I remember talking to someone and they said, man, it's hard to believe that this is all there is. And I said, this isn't all there is. And they said, well, you can't prove that. And I said, if this is all there is, all the misery, all the hate, all the pain, if this is all there is, let me die now. Because there's nothing good. This isn't all there is, because God sent His Son to bring real true life to us. Life that is without sin. Life that is without sorrow. Life that is without separation. Life begins when we stand with God away from this world. And as you read in John chapter 1, one of the other things that you find about what Jesus did is Jesus brought the light of men into the world. Well, how did He do that? When He came and He preached, He brought that light. You know, it's interesting as you read in John 3, He says, because they didn't want it. Those that live in darkness do not want the light. Well, that's true, because they're evident. Things that they do in the darkness is made evident, it's seen when light is cast upon it. It's obvious. It's made apparent. And you can't get away from it. And those that live in that darkness, they don't want their sins revealed, because then they realize, you know, my sins have been revealed. Now I need to do something about it. It's easier to deny something if people don't know about it. But not only do we have to look at the light, not only do we have to look at His light, we have to look at our light, as seen in Matthew chapter 5. And when you look at verses 14 through 16, and you really read what's there, and you understand a deeper significance of verse 16, so let your light shine so that men may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. That gives us understanding of what our light is for. It gives us understanding of what that light that Jesus gave, it gives us understanding of why we live the way we live. So let your light shine. We show the light of Christ when our light is shining. That's why we sing the song that's based off of these verses. Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine. Because we want people to see the light of Christ. And we are the reflection that light goes out with and shows the world who Christ is by the life you and I live. And light is so important. We were on our way to the church building this morning. And we came by a house, and I looked over and as we were going by it, and there was a lady sitting on her porch, wrapped up in a blanket with her coffee cup sitting on that porch. And I thought, that's dedication right there. But why was she sitting on the porch? She was sitting on the porch because although we had overcast, she was still getting a little bit of sunlight and fresh air. You see, I love mornings when I have that cup of coffee in my hand and I'm sitting out in a swing or in my chair and the sun is shining and I can see the beauty and I hear the birds and I can enjoy that. That light warms us, does it not? That light touches us in such a way that you and I look at it and we think, wow, look what God gave me. And what's so great, and I love doing this when we're at the beach, I like going out and watching the sunrise. Y'all have heard me say this even. I like watching the sunrise over the water of the ocean as I'm standing there on the seashore, or even at the hotel or wherever we are. And I'm standing on a balcony or I'm standing outside, whatever the case is, and I'm able to see that sun come up and shine that morning light. The beauty, the warmth, the joy it brings. And although we may have never made the connection, that light like we have when we have that sunset and we're sitting out there and we're watching it and we feel those feelings that we have, that's the same feelings that the world has to an extent when you and I are the light that we're supposed to be in the world of darkness so that they see and they feel that light of God within us. Through our light or life, others can know God. Romans chapter 8, verses 1 through 4, as well as 37 through 39. Romans 8 is a great lesson if we really truly go in and we take it at heart and we look at what's there and we apply the things that God has given. It's amazing what we can do. One of the things that I hate hearing Christians say is, oh, I just can't do that. I hate hearing that statement. Some will say, oh, well, there are people that can't do certain things. And I'm not talking about physically can't do certain things. I'm talking about when you have a situation and somebody says, oh, I just can't do that. Well, why not? That's not my cup of tea. It's not a matter of whether it's our cup of tea. It's a matter of whether or not we're living the life that God told us to live. Because no matter how you look at it, people are watching us. Especially when they know who we are. That's why I tell y'all a lot. I don't like when people find out I'm a preacher right away. Because people's attitude toward me changes instantly. I would rather them think I'm just an everyday person that's standing there talking to them. Because I see the true individual before me. But the minute they find out I'm a preacher, oh, that is a complete different. Oh. And it's like they become holier than they were just because I'm standing there. I think I've told y'all about this. I was staying at some friend's house over on the other side of Red Bay, house sitting for them, and I had to come into town to go to class, or I was going to services, I don't remember which, but I'm coming up 72 toward Muscle Shoals, and there's a car on the side of the road, and I pull off. I could see the guys struggling with a tire. I know everybody kept telling me, oh, you don't need to stop on the side of the road for people that are on the side. You never know what's going to happen. And I got out and I walked over to this car and I looked at the guy and I said, dude, is there anything I can help you with? I knew why he was on the side of the road, so I didn't ask the dumb question, you got a flat tire? I could tell he had a flat tire. I didn't have to ask that question. And so he says, I'm just trying to change this tire and the lug wrench I have is not working. And he looks over at my vehicle, he says, that's a Mercury. And I said, yeah. And he says, your lug wrench will work. And I was like, okay. And I knew it would. When he told me what he needed, I went to my vehicle and I got my star wrench out, which has 4 different sides on it. And we went over and he started getting it. And the whole time this dude is cussing up a storm. I will tell you, I have hung out with sailors. As y'all know, I've hung out with sailors and Marines. And this dude's language probably would have made them blush the way he was talking. And we get done, and he's like, oh, thank you, man. He says, how much do I owe you? I said, you don't owe me anything. He's like, no, man, I got to give you something. I said, you want to give me something? He said, yeah. I said, I preach at St. Louis Avenue around the corner up here in Sheffield. Why don't you join us next Sunday? You're a preacher? If I'd have known you were a preacher, I wouldn't have been talking like that. And I looked at him and I said, don't mean any disrespect, but if you're willing to talk in front of God like that, don't worry about whether or not I'm a preacher. You see, it's like they become this totally different person when they find out who I am. And it's not about who I am because they're doing it in front of God regardless. But when we live that life we're supposed to live, they're going to know who we are. And they may put on a facade. They may act like something they're not. But that's not between you and them. That's between God and them. You live that life that you're supposed to live so that your light shines and they see God in you every day of your life. It doesn't matter. That's how we're supposed to be. That's how we're supposed to live. So when it comes to the light that we have, it needs to be one in such a way that people see God in everything we do. And so this morning I'm going to ask you one question. When people look at you, do they see the light of God in you? And if they don't, then isn't it time to get right with Him? If you're not a Christian, water's ready. Jesus is ready. There should be no reason that you should hold back. If you believe that He is the Son of God, and you're willing to change your life from a life of sin to a life of righteousness, if you're willing to confess Him before men, there should be no reason you should not be ready to get in water and to be immersed for the remission of your sins, calling on His name. For those of us that are Christians, are we truly letting our light shine? Are we living that life so that those around us see God in everything that we do? Because that's the question. And if they're not, do we need to get right through prayer, confession of sin, and repentance? My answer is yes. But are you willing? What will you do? What light do people see in you? If you need to respond to this invitation, I plead with you. Let us help. Do something about it right now by coming forward while together we stand and sing this invitation song.